This is our live coverage from AWS On Air at the New York City Summit. I'm A.M. Grabelny, one of your hosts. I'm a developer advocate here for Game Day, joined by, I love these segments that we do, Farah. Farah, please introduce yourself to everybody.
Hi, everyone. My name is Farah Campbell. I'm the head of the Modern Compute community at AWS, and I am so excited to be here with you and then
AJ.
Yes.
Yeah. Hey,
Tell
everyone.
us about yourself.
Thanks for having me on, AM. I'm AJ Steimerberg. I'm an engineer at Datadog here, and I'm also one of the newest AWS serverless heroes, which has been very exciting. That's something I've kind of aspired to for a long time. And previously was an AWS community builder for 3 years. So it's super, super exciting. Very happy to be here with you both.
But you've been in the serverless community for a lot longer than that.
Oh, gosh, yeah. 2016 or 2017, I'd say, is probably when I first started trying out AWS's serverless offerings. Yeah.
Every time I see you in that seat next to me, Farah, I know I'm in for a treat because we're going to be talking to one of the AWS heroes, one of my favorite programs at AWS. Been here a while, and I've met some of the nicest, greatest human beings I've ever met in my life through the AWS Heroes program. Every time Farah
Like
says...
me, like I was one.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, there is nothing kidding about that. You are incredible. So, AJ, maybe you want to tell us a little bit before, I know we've got a demo to jump into.
Yeah.
Don't want to take too much time, but maybe you want to talk to us about your experience with the Hero program. You know, for anybody who doesn't know what an AWS Hero is, maybe can you give a brief summary of what the program is, you know, who's in there?
Yeah, you bet. The AWS Heroes program is a recognition and camaraderie group of folks that have contributed to AWS in various I think we call them like tracks or verticals. There's like a serverless group, like a containers group, and a few others, community. And they're people that have had like really big impacts on the AWS community as a whole and just kind of the developer community. So they're people that sort of represent that group. It's a group that I've long looked up to, and there's a number of people in there like Alex Debris, who's been a personal mentor and a friend of mine for a long time, but really talented people that I've aspired to for years. So still feels like pinch me. I'm dreaming that I'm counted in that group. That's a huge honor, but really, really excited to be among them now.
We just had Alex on a show I run called Step Up Your Game Day.
Oh,
Alex
yeah.
just came and played a game day with us. So AJ, you're up next.
Up next.
You'll have to come join the show at some point.
Always a hard bar to reach.
This is how I get people to come on the show, is I ask them on live
Just
camera.
put them on the spot.
Yeah,
so
they can't say
yes.
no.
Yeah.
Like, they can't. I mean, I guess they could, but most people don't.
All right, well, you'll have to talk with Farah. She's in charge of my work as a serverless hero, so you got to go through her first.
All right.
I'll let you know.
I'll get your Venmo info later, Farah.
All right, so we have a demo.
Yeah.
Yeah, what are we talking about today?
Absolutely. So in addition to my work as like a serverless hero and kind of a blogger, I do a lot of work at Datadog on serverless observability. So today I wanted to show a little bit about some of the work we've done with our open source tracer and agent components, which sort of generate telemetry data from your AWS serverless environment and send it back to Datadog. So what I pulled up on my screen here is an example map of a trace for just a pretty typical AWS serverless service. We have an API gateway endpoint that receives data on a publish post request. And then next we've got like a Lambda function that acts as a publisher, kind of a broker, and it pushes to an SNS topic. If you're new to AWS's like serverless offerings, you've probably heard about Lambda, maybe not SNS, which is like a messaging system that can also then push to something called SQS, which is a queue. It's used to manage back pressure, so you can kind of handle things asynchronously. Finally, that message is picked up by another AWS Lambda function, which is a worker. So we've got this like map here, but I want to show you the flame graph and kind of what really goes on under the hood when Lambda runs your code. So this flame graph is certainly a more complex view of what we were looking at earlier, but there are a few things I want to call out. We can see the time we spend in API gateway before that Lambda function receives the request. And if you've heard about Lambda and serverless, you've more than likely heard about something called a cold start. A cold start is when a Lambda sandbox is not yet available. So what AWS Lambda has to do is spin one up or create a new one for you. There's some parts of a cold start that we can change, and there's some parts we can't. But the parts we can change, we're actually going to measure here and show you, for example, here's how long it takes these dependencies to load. We can see that the handler took around 350 milliseconds to load, and in there we're loading an SNS client along with some more AWS libraries, Axios, which is a popular Node.js request library as well.
Yeah, I love Axios.
Yeah, so this like end-to-end trace, I think, is key for understanding how your services work together. After the Axios makes a couple of requests, it's actually just going to Datadog for this example. But then we can spend time publishing inside of SNS, and then that message is picked up by SQS, which is then further downstream triggered inside of a Lambda function where that is processed, presumably, and the chargeback is processed and considered resolved. So that whole thing, we can kind of have an end-to-end time, and we can measure that here and reflect that. So we built this in March, and or actually, I think we built it in November, and we were looking at it over the new year. And we learned some really cool things about AWS and work with the team to talk about something called proactive initialization. I've been really excited to share this. Yeah. So this is a capability within AWS Lambda that allows, in some cases, Lambda can warm up your function ahead of time and kind of solve those cold starts. And it's the neatest thing for me as a serverless customer and a serverless developer, because it's like the promise of serverless fulfilled, right?
Right.
The idea, because that was the pitch when this whole came out, was you're going to just upload your code to AWS, and they'll run it for you, they'll optimize it for you, they'll put it where it needs to be.
The operations are handled, like, you just get to focus on dev.
Yeah, exactly. And the idea of, like, I think the biggest promise was, like, we're going to improve this for you. This will get better, and we're going to invest in it. We're not only there to ensure that the system runs, but as a bonus, you're going to actually get performance improvements. And we found this and work with this team, and we've been actually tagging these. And you can see we've got thousands of these over the last couple of days for various invocations. And what these are all pre-warmed Lambda functions. So when we look at one of those flame graphs, you see this kind of large gap, and here's like 5 minutes, right? So 5 minutes went by when Lambda first warmed up this function, all the way over here. It initialized it, didn't have a request, was warm, waiting, and everything. And then way down here, it actually ran the requests at the end of the day. So when we look at this, in aggregate, we can see certain functions have a pretty high percentage of these, depending on their workload and the frequency in which they're called and what those functions are doing. So
AJ, sorry to interrupt. We've got a question from chat. So we're actually looking at Datadog right now.
Yeah.
So a question from chat was, are these in-depth traces automatically included in Lambda?
Oh, yeah.
This is Datadog.
Great question from the viewer. Yeah, this is a Datadog instrumentation on top of AWS Lambda. But if you're using something like AWS's CDK or SAM, we can plug into that right out of the box. So it's kind of, you don't have to configure this. You don't have to manually do any of this. You can sort of just install the instrumentation and go.
Nice, very nice. Yeah, I mean, earlier you were saying, this becomes incredibly important when you're building, especially in a way with all these different serverless services. There used to be a time period, I think it's gone now, where you could look at code and see, like, it's where's the code going, like what functions are it calling, and you could do a full in-depth thing. Even back then, where I'm talking about, it would be beneficial to fire up the code and see stuff flowing through it, and that can help you. You can't do that so much with serverless, right? Like you're enacting so many different services and interacting with so many different things. It could get tough without a tool like this to figure out, well, this code calls this, and then this thing happens, and this thing happens, and then there's that, right? Like following the kind of Rube Goldberg type flow, it can be difficult without tracing like this.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially as we're leveraging more and more of these cloud native managed services where you're handing off sort of an API request. You're not running SQS. We don't have to run SNS. And I'm grateful for that. I don't carry a pager for that, right? Like I don't have to be on call for that service. I don't have to, I have to keep an eye on some of the metrics and work within the parameters of the system that are published, but I don't actually have to own it, which is a huge relief for me as a developer. And I think that's what really first got me into serverless in the first place, was that I had so much leverage that I didn't have before. Previously, like you described, I could run this whole app by myself, or this massive call path to troubleshoot a bug, but you're talking about teams of people, right? A veritable army of developers would be required to build or maintain those applications. And now I can just make an API call and say, hey, Amazon, can I get a queue? Can I try this? And then that'll scale to millions of requests per second or further. It's just it's a very high leverage tool which I really enjoy.
Also getting some questions from Chet about is there dark mode?
Is there dark
for
mode?
This?
There is dark mode. I apologize for blinding everybody. Here we go. It's set to the light mode for now. There you go. I do apologize. I realize this is on Twitch, and I probably should have done that from the beginning.
That's okay.
That's on
okay.
me.
And you said that this is an open source project. You open source this?
Yeah, actually, all of our agents and tracers, anything that you would run in your own, this code has to run in your Lambda function. It's not Datadog's Lambda function, it's yours. And I totally understand, Farah, if you don't trust me. So you should go ahead and read the code that I write. 75 to 85% of everything that I do at Datadog is open source and public. It's been great for collaboration. It's been great for buy-in and people who are helping spot my bugs or improve the product, which has been huge. But also, it's if you're going to run it, you should know how it works, and it's public. So
getting love from chat for the dark mode switch. Also, had a question about what about cross-account tracing? So if you have an app sync, that you're calling in account B from account A.
Yeah. Absolutely. So trace context for us can be handled and propagated in a number of ways. You can do that with just a simple web request, so that it sort of ignores the boundaries of the specific AWS account. In other cases, we do collect data from the AWS account, and then you'd sort of have to have the integration hooked up to both AWS accounts. But for the most part, we can put together a trace regardless, and that's including people unfortunately still have machines running under their desks, right? And we can run tracers in those.
I'm like, something
is
down
there
here.
something down there?
Oh, the payroll's down here.
Yeah, that's not moving.
Don't touch it,
yeah,
or we don't get paid, Farah.
And it's all in COBOL, so.
Yeah, if it gets unplugged, our paychecks stop coming. Mine stopped coming a long time ago.
And just keep showing up.
You
just keep showing up.
Yeah.
Because you love hanging out with us so much.
That's right. Because I love meeting the heroes, really.
Oh, wow. Well, hopefully I'm an ambassador for the group. This latest group of heroes were all community builders for a number of years. I think there were 10 of us in this batch.
There was 10 of us. Yeah, 10 of you, yeah.
Yeah, so if anyone's interested in the hero program or the community builder program, you can find those resources online, or you can always reach out to me. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, AJ, we unfortunately are out of time. I have to applaud you, number one, for having 2 initials as your name. I think that's a bold choice. Great choice. Really, only the best people have names like that.
Well, I'm happy to reflect your own confirmation bias.
I don't know what you're talking about. My name is Alan Michael. I'm just kidding. I'm AM. So yeah, it is a confirmation bias, a bit. But thank you for joining us, AJ. Any parting words, real quick, before we have to take off?
No, I'm happy to answer any questions you have about serverless or the AWS community as well. I'm really excited about the group here. I'm going to go and support the fellow community builders who are giving talks today.
Wonderful. So. Reach out, follow AJ, and watch for more on AWS On Air, as we'll be right back.